21st, 2013, at the last Tushao Council meeting, the signing of the agreement for disbursement of $10 million was completed. This will address the remaining application for land titles, which is before the ministry. In the next 3 years, this $10.7 million, which allocated from RIF funds to address the outstanding request, will commence. Mr. Speaker, today the Amerindians are the largest private landowners, with collective rights over more than 14% of Guyana land mass. The numbers of titled villages is expected to increase from 97 to 110, bringing to completion all applications for communal land title. It will also include addressing demarcation and extension application. Mr. Speaker, there is no country in the wider international community that can match Guyana's record regarding land rights and ownership. It is the People's Progressive Party civic government that rose to the occasion to ensure that tenure of Amerindian communities were secured. 22 villages which settled after independence were provided with land titles. This dismisses the propaganda that the People's Progressive Party civic government is out to rob Amerindians of their lands. Mr. Speaker, these are the benefits that are derived from this government, and of course, more so supported from the initiative of the LCDS. Mr. Speaker, I also need to say that on the opposite side, there sits 2 members of the MSSC who continue to fail to inform their constituency of such achievements and benefits under our LCDS. Mr. Speaker, I also want to turn to the aspect of inclusion in our government and in our body politics. Mr. Speaker, there's been no time in the history of this country, no time in the history of this country where Amerindians, even though we form only 10% of the population, has a large and sizable representation in the cabinet, in the parliament, and the RDC levels in the internal regions. Mr. Speaker, we have been provided with this opportunity under a PPP civic government. Mr. Speaker, just look around in the front bench and what do you see? You see the face and the image of Guyana in our Foreign Affairs Minister. Mr. Speaker, anyone who wishes to dispute that indigenous people do not participate in their development, who dispute that the indigenous people are not consulted with respect to development taking place at a national level, I wish to reaffirm that this is the evidence whereby even in the opposite side today you can see not only a handful but a substantial amount of indigenous MPs speaking on behalf of the Amerindian population. And this was made, of course, possible in the democracy which the People's Progressive Party continue to foster in this country. Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that the budget is a pro-poor budget, people's budget, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend this budget, and I expect that on the opposite side of the House, we will not stymie the development prospects and potential for our country, more so those of for indigenous development. I thank you, Mrs. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Madam Minister, for your speech. I call now on Ms. Eula Marcel,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AFC welcomes all support for my Amerindian people. Warrior Tuesday, Ina Kaponyamet, Iche Moro, Ina Wechi Moro, Eke Peiwa. Wapi Arakon Kaponyamet of this Guyana Pay. Listen at large.
You need to translate me, Governor.
We deserve better treatment as the first people of Guyana. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to lend my support to the members of the Alliance for Change who have spoken before me. First of all, I wish to endorse the theme for this year's budget, which states a better Guyana for all Guyanese. As I listened to this great presentation of the Honorable Finance Minister, I was left in dismay as to whether all Guyanese people are truly the beneficiaries of these large sums of money. As I interact with my fellow Guyanese from all walks of life, I have heard them describing the country's state of affairs as the worst ever when compared to previous years of struggle. In spite of the largest ever budgets being presented year after year, Mr. Speaker, the economic resources of this country are not adequately distributed, especially to the poor and the working class. This year's budget has not adequately addressed the needs and wishes of these ordinary Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, let me proceed to address the most critical issues affecting the people of Region 8. Much has been said about development as the minister continues to sing the same lyrics he sings every year. Mr. Speaker, development in hinterlands are hindered by the government officials elected to look after the affairs of the region as they continue to refuse to take recommendations for development put forward by regional democratic councils, education department, health department, and public works department to enhance democracy at grassroots levels. Mr. Speaker, schools across the region continue to experience difficult challenges when it comes to education delivery, as inadequate learning materials, textbooks, janitorial supplies in nursery, primary, and secondary schools, inadequate number of trained teachers. Mr. Speaker, in order to deliver good quality education to our children, leaders of tomorrow, we need to put strong emphasis in training specialized teachers rather than voluntary teachers. Mr. Speaker, most instances, especially in secondary schools, teachers trained in pre-vocational subjects are tasked to teach compulsory subjects like mathematics and English. Quality education says they are not qualified. When this happens, they are unable to deliver quality education since they are not qualified in these subjects. Instead, they are put to teach the subjects they are qualified in. Instead, they should be put to teach subjects they are qualified in. I am sure that our children will be able to gain outstanding performances. Mr. Speaker, I therefore wish to ask the government to train teachers from hinterlands so that upon the completion of their training, and it continues this year. Health is one of the most important things an individual needs to have to bring progress to his livelihood and to others. If this government is serious, Mr. Speaker, about the decent health care delivery in this country, let him pay public servants 15% increase in their salaries, especially those health care providers who work tirelessly taking care of the sick. Stock the hospitals, health centers, health posts with adequate amounts of drugs and medical supplies in a timely manner. Expired drugs have become an order of the day, Mr. Speaker. Drugs supplied to these institutions are discovered expired upon arrival. The medical supplies are distributed in small quantities and the administrators fail to take into consideration the growing population. Mr. Speaker, honorable ministers spoke boldly about the increase of the nurses and doctors in the health sector. I would not dispute his statement. However, Mr. Speaker, there are several health centers in region number 8 which do not have a doctor nor a CHW. For example, there is no doctor at Cato Cottage Hospital. It is managed by 2 female CHWs. As in the case of Kaibaru Panyumaikwak and Chumachumari, there is no medical personnel. So the decent health care delivery cannot be realized in these communities. When applications are made by persons, especially from Region 8, and reaches the Ministry of Health, they are put aside by those doing selection for trading by saying, Region 8, problematic region. Trained medical professionals from hinterlands to knowledge institutions adequately because these areas remain to have high fertility rate. Not because we are sexy, Mr. Speaker, or because of our culture, but rather because they cannot have the equal access to family planning methods. We need dedicated persons who are readily available when emergencies arise, because in some instances, some doctors drink alcohol whole night and sleeps all day, and sometimes come to work staggering. How can we trust a drunk man's diagnosis and prescription? Mr. Speaker, due to such incidents, patients travel to Georgetown for medical attention at their own expense. That is why Georgetown Public Hospital is burdened with minor health issues which could have been addressed at regional level. Shortages of medical supplies in North Pacaraima have led to unnecessary referrals to district hospitals in the region. Water. Our water woes continue despite the implementation of wells in 2012-2013. The Salbora goes on and off. The 3 communities have had no water for 3 months now. The wells at Paramakato is non-functional. The walls of the well has broken away. Water leaks and cannot enter the pipelines. Dorm students continue to fetch water for staff to cook meals for them from a spring located 100 feet from the dorms every morning, lunchtime, and after school. In other areas such as Bamboo Creek, Monkey Mountain, Tuscany, they need water storage facilities and extension of pipelines to better serve the community. Mr. Speaker, in the years 2012-2013, more infrastructural developments have been promised to be built. As more sums of money are allocated in this sector, contractors continue to rake away taxpayers' dollars either for substandard work done or incomplete work. Overpayments for incomplete work, as indicated in Auditor General's report. When our representative on this side of the House raises questions with the intention to rectify the discrepancies, we are referred to as foolish men and women. And oftentimes, the regional authorities of the government readily denies the facts. Mr. Speaker, I stand here not to twist the truth, but to speak the truth. That these developmental projects are properly scrutinized in its initial stages and completion stages as echoed by the Minister of Public Service in her speech. Examples of projects include non-completion of Mountain Foot since 2012, and here is the picture. Put on the walls are concrete and mud bricks. Since our Sawa Health Center not completed since 3 years ago. X-ray department extension left incomplete since works commenced early this year. No services, no X-ray services at Malia District Hospital. Accommodation, Mr. Speaker. Accommodation is becoming a problem for our workers since apartments are built to house single workers. As more families enter the labor force, they cannot provide adequate housing for them. Because of such family splits, and women sometimes are left as single parents since we cannot keep them together. So I urge this government in a solution to at least by expanding on new buildings to house a family of 6. Since our workers are continue to be removed from the comfort of their homes to offer services in other areas where they are mostly needed. Furnished government staff apartments need to be made available to all, not a few. Mr. Speaker, in most cases, some workers are given empty quarters while others enjoy the luxury of resources, thus forcing them to do furnishing at their own expense. While government continue to make allocations for furniture and equipment, none are found in some. It is time for us to put our party politics and serve the people of this nation. Roads in Hinterland cannot continue to remain in need of. For example, if vehicles are purchased for help, they should carry a name, Regional Democratic Council Health Services. And if for education, Regional Democratic Council, so that these vehicles can be easily identified.
That's right.
Because in recent times, Mr. Speaker, we were told that some vehicles were purchased for health and education, but when we were looking for the vehicles, the RU claims that they are for admin office. Ambulance is yet to be received. Mr. Speaker, at this time we are looking for a new ambulance as we were told, not a second-hand one which was touring around the country. Mr. Speaker, an ATV given by the Amerindian Affairs Minister to senior counsel at Mountain Foot to help with transportation was never handed over to him, even though attempts were made to secure same. The CEO holds on to it and uses it for his administration, even though 2 ATVs were given to him for his office. None are functional. Corruption continues at grassroots level. Security, Mr. Speaker, as large sums of money are allocated to security sector, we continue to see Guyanese being robbed, raped, killed every day. Mr. Speaker, you cannot escape a day without a crime scene on the front cover of the newspaper. Where is the police force? Where is the SWAT team? Mr. Speaker, are they only securing the ministers of government? Mr. Speaker, police in hinterlands are not fully equipped to deal with serious crimes such as murder. They seem more than afraid for their lives without proper equipment and protective gear to venture into deep forests of hinterlands to capture criminals. Mr. Speaker, hinterlands have become a safe haven for criminals. They walk free without fear, eat and dwell among us. They continue to steal and kill our hard-working miners for their gold and money, and their families do not get justice. We continue to live in fear. Border security is nowhere close to reality. Brazilians continue to enter Guyana's shores to do
Honourable member, you have 5 minutes in which to conclude.
Give our military officers the means of adequate land and air transport. Let them secure our borders on land, water, and air. Mr. Speaker, communication. We, the Alliance for Change, continue to pursue aggressively the development for all Guyanese by representing their needs. Region 8 remains years behind communication technology. No television, no electricity, no access to information about the happenings. Thus, this government used the disadvantage to filter into these communities the hard truths about the opposition. Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue to be fooled like this. Let me remind this government that they cannot continue to fool us. We cannot remain this way all the time. We can use any opportunity presented to us to get the factual information on the happenings in Guyana. When the budget was presented by Honorable Minister, there was less mention of hinterland developments, and more emphasis was placed on large projects which can benefit 3/4 of the population. Mr. Speaker, we were asked by the former minister not to worry about little things like potholes. Rather, we must worry about bigger projects. Mr. Speaker, this clearly indicates that this government, following the footsteps of former president, continue to ignore the concerns of the little man in the hinterlands. Electricity not readily available. The NPL provides electricity to Mali at a cost of $100. The solution to this problem, Mr. Speaker, is not the Amaila Falls, it's the Machumari hydropower project. Solar panels given to Amerindian communities are non-functional. As in the case of Tusene, about 50 solar panels given to Tusene are non-functional and are stored in the corners of their houses. This cannot work. Come on, government, you cannot continue to treat Amerindians like this. Give them good things so that they can enjoy the benefits of a caring government. Mr. Speaker, I wish to conclude by saying that this very government, who objected strenuously when opposition made cuts to national budgets, slash 60% of regional budgets before they are finalized into national budget. Mr. Speaker, how can this government expect this side of the house to see smooth passage of this budget when we had no input inside it? AFC stands firm and strong on this side of the house. Mr. Speaker, this government have failed on the side of people. This government have failed Guyanese people since 2012, 2013, and now 2014 budget. 2 years have passed since the government promised to end corruption, create jobs, reduce narco trafficking, and improve the living of all Guyanese by changing course. These continue to exist among us, thus leading to prostitution, human trafficking, drug abuse, increase in HIV among our young people in hinterlands. Only this year, Mr. Speaker, 4 young people under the age of 20 lose their lives with co-infection of HIV and tuberculosis. We need medical technicians to go across the region to detect these diseases early so that people can be given medical care. And not even that, Mr. Speaker, he has failed to correct corrupt policies of previous regime and even have failed to remove corrupt politicians in various ministries who are unprepared to make a better Guyana for all Guyanese. This type of behavior is difficult to explain to ordinary Guyanese. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I wish to urge members on both sides of this house, let integrity and honesty protect us as we continue to serve Guyanese. Thank you.
How she say with Sharon? She say you can fall on me.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I wish to congratulate the Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashwin Singh, and his team for the hard work in crafting the 2014 budget with the theme, A Better Guyana for All Guyanese. which capture succinctly the ideal which we all aspire. We are reminded constantly about the natural riches of our country by many who have had the opportunity to see it. We know that we have the potential to make our country the proverbial El Dorado, if only we can get the cooperation of the opposition to put Guyana first, as some would like to assert. The quotes on the front page of the budget speech presented by the Honorable Finance Minister remind us that we are on a positive path of development in a variety of ways. The one used by the CDB of February 14, 2014 states, and I quote, "Guyana is a good example of a country that has done some of the right things. They have come a very, very long distance in terms of their fiscal situation," end of quote. Good economists and housewives know that you can only spend what you have, and that the prudent management of money is a must, whether it's your home or country. The Minister of Finance reminded us in his speech that the economy recorded its 8th consecutive year of growth, with real GDP expanding by 5.2%. This represents the longest period of uninterrupted real economic growth in independent Guyana. We have heard the various ministers providing enough information on their respective sectors. We have heard of the various initiatives and projects which have created thousands of jobs for citizens. But you know what? Some of my honorable colleagues across the table do not see anything happening. You know, there is a saying, "There are none so blind as those who do not wish to see." As far as the opposition is concerned, we have not done anything good for Guyana. Well, it is their preferred view. But there is an objective view, not from the government, but the IMF, who in December 2013 had this to say, and I quote from the budget speech, "During the last decade, Guyana's strong macroeconomic performance has contributed to a reduction in public debt levels and sustained poverty reduction," end of quote. Mr. Speaker, Guyana will be celebrating 48 years as an independent nation. Those leaders who led the independence struggle had a vision for Guyana. And we, as their heirs, have a patriotic responsibility to ensure the accelerated growth of our country in all areas of endeavor to make that vision a reality. All of us want to live in a country where our needs are met and where the young in particular will have their dreams and aspirations fulfilled. If we want the young people of this country to stay and develop, we have to stop perpetuating these negative and divisive acts which are impeding our progress. The PNC had the opportunity to rule this country for nearly 3 decades through rigged elections, undemocratic and dictatorial rule. Members of the PNC in the APNU partnership seem to have forgotten that. They held on fiercely to power, whether it was by overseas voting or by the army takeover of the ballot boxes. The PPP and the PPPC government, on the other hand, have the opportunity to govern, but the difference here is we are doing so by democratic rule. We all aspire, Mr. Speaker, to see a better Guyana. But yet, when a transformative project like the Amina Falls become possible, our opposition, who instead of being patriotic and innovative, opted to straddle the project. You keep harping about the cost of living and everything else, but we all know that unless we will not be able to advance the developmental agenda as quickly as we want. The opposition sought to create havoc was made for electricity in Linden 2012. This year, I am my own woman. I follow no one. This year, 3.2 billion has been provided to meet the cost of maintaining the electricity subsidy in Linden and Pokwani, so that 10,500 electricity consumers in Region 10 can continue to benefit 23,000 monthly per electricity consumer. Compare this to 3.17 billion to benefit 170,000 of GPL customers and their families. The honourable members in the opposition have been putting up roadblocks all along, using all means possible to thwart development. When will you stop being obstructionists and start behaving responsibly and constructively? Even before the debate started, you were putting up boulders and stone wall. The problem is, you had operated in an age when no one had access to information because you silenced dissent. Today you have access to information, hence the ability to scrutinize and to cuss us out. Budget 2014 provides for increases in the social sectors, which have been a trend of all previous PBPC budget. This honourable member, Vanessa Kisu, is one of the principles of Dr. Jagan when he spoke about people being at the center of development. We have changed the order of spending by ensuring that more money is spent on health, education, and housing rather than on propaganda and the machinery for the suppression of the people. We have provided subsidy over the years for electricity, provided loans for students, and made lands affordable for the citizens of this country. Where can you buy a piece of land for $250 US for low-income bracket? Tell me, which part of the world can you do it? It was here. Dr. Jacob did not allow the bauxite industry to fall apart when he got into office. Millions of US were voted annually to ensure people kept their jobs. It is the same argument for the sugar industry. We do not want people to lose their jobs. Perhaps the old attitude and belief still lingers for the opposition that sugar workers should still remain barefooted and ignorant. Mr. Speaker, I was shocked to hear the comment made by the Honourable Keith Scott when he said, and I quote, "No money spent on projects will deliver a better life for people," end of quote. It is such a backward comment, but you should not be surprised because the honourable member is now joined in opposition with those who failed for 28 years to deliver a better life for people. Your brother-in-law, this honourable member, must be turning in his grave. What about the initiatives of Leaf and Leap, which provided assistance to the people of Linden? What about the massive housing drive in Amelia Ward? Who built it? Did people of the area benefit from jobs as masons, etc.? Please do not repeat this fallacious comment. Return to your earlier way of thinking before you became politically contaminated. Budget 2014, Mr. Speaker, provides additional assistance to the elderly, job creation for young people, assistance to children going to school, access to credit, among others, which were alluded to by other speakers. We applaud the initiative to keep Guyana clean. I personally am ready and willing to be part of this initiative on a voluntary basis. This is something which is needed As a matter of fact, the Knights of Guyana started since 1998. Just for you were not even around. The opposition have requested answers to numerous questions of various government policies, and they have been receiving them. So rather than chopping, you can do the process, which is the role of the opposition. You are not the elected government. We still have the constitutional right to run this country. We have the responsibility to govern. Mrs. Speaker, we are reminded by Honorable Joe Hamilton of the improvements and initiatives of the health sector when he spoke. The Parliamentary Sectoral Committee visited 4 hospitals: Lenora, West Demerara Regional, Diamond Diagnostic, and the Maikoni Hospital. We went, we saw, we made recommendations, and we were satisfied with the outcome of that visit. And all members of that team agreed with that. A social worker, Mr. Speaker, from the Campbellville Health Center speaks glowingly of the difference which they are making to the lives of people. She did not complain about the money, but reminded that she was there to serve. I had the opportunity to visit the Georgetown Hospital as well, and I'm pleased with the improvements and services that are being offered. Of course, there are lapses from time to time which have to be reduced by improving management. I want to congratulate the Minister of Health and the Ministry for the various initiatives taken to improve women's health. These initiatives, Mr. Speaker, were already alluded to by the Honorable Minister, Dr. Ramsaran. Effective management at the regional hospitals in collaboration with the regions will definitely see improvement in the services which are provided. Budget 2014 allocates a sum of 13.7 billion which is budgeted to improve roads and bridges, of which 12.9 billion will be spent on roads and 844.2 million will be spent on bridges. Mr. Speaker, expansion of our road is critical since there has been an increase of vehicular traffic. In the late 80s, there were 15,000 vehicles on the road, and by 1992, that increased to 18,000. In 2013, all vehicles, including agricultural, motorcycle, ATVs, buses, lorries, cars, vans, pickup, jeeps, etc., amount to 128,000. Mr. Herman, honorable member, I think you should think about that as you criticize the roads. This, Mr. Speaker, exclude bicycles, horse-drawn donkey carts, and all the containers that we see daily on the road. Mr. Speaker, as one of the regional reps from Region 4, I wish to refer to some major development projects which were undertaken by the Ministry of Public Works and Ministry of Housing for this region. And they are as follows. The construction of the 4-lane access road to CGIA on the eastbound Demerara 4-lane highway, as well as the widening of the East Coast Highway, and this project will continue. A study for the new Demerara Bridge has been completed, and already government has invited expressions of interest for public-private partnership for its construction. An additional 338 million is allocated for critical works to extend the life of Demerara Harbour Bridge. The sum of $1,021,020 was allocated for 76 roads in 2013. 35 roads were completed to the tune of 351,638,000, with 41 at varying levels of completion. The Ministry of Housing, under the CRIP program, has completed the following community roads. NDC Unity Vereeniging, $494,452 were spent on 32 community roads. Mon Repose, La Reconnaissance, 248 million were spent on 31 roads. Elmore Hope, 180,426,000,000 for 15 roads. Golden Grove Diamond, $193,343,000,000, excuse me, on 14 roads. Haslington Grove, $230,708,000 for 18 community roads. Industry Plaisance, NDC, $318,814,000 were spent. In 2013, CH&PA expended $5.2 billion to develop 4,668 lots in 9 areas on the east bank of Demerara. All of these are ongoing projects. In terms of sanitation improvement, $600 million is allocated to improve Georgetown sanitation. The money is allocated to the development.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The money is allocated to the development of more housing scheme, provision of water supply, improvement in the drainage and irrigation, along with all the initiatives taken by the various government ministries, will improve the lives of citizens as we continue in the task of making Guyana a better place for all Guyanese. The dream of making our country a better place is fast becoming a reality. Of course, there are problems, but these will have to be resolved in order to move Guyana forward. Mr. Speaker, in response to the ATV issue that was raised by Honorable Member Marcelo, I want to say that ATV handed over in November. 6 ATVs were handed over in November 2013, and meetings were held on 29th of March 2014 in Cato, and the Senior Council came to the meetings with this ATV to meet the minister. I just wanted to correct that misinformation that the Honorable Member said. Mr. Speaker, once again, I wish to congratulate the Minister, the Honorable Minister, Dr. Ashby Singh, and his capable staff of the Ministry of Finance. I commend the budget and call on the opposition to really put Guyana first and give support to the forward-looking budget 2014. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, I now invite Ms. Renita Williams, Regional Representative for Region Number 1, Hawaii, to address the board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my first presentation in this honorable house on the 2014 budget theme, A Better Guyana for All Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, after listening to the honorable member on the opposite side of the house, on the opposite side of the house, I am not convinced that this budget is a people's budget. Maybe it might be better for some, a few maybe, but certainly. Mr. Speaker, the pressing questions that are frequently asked are, where is the money to be spent? Who benefits? What is the impact? A national budget should be for the development of the whole the nation, but we see at the regional level poor service, especially for residents of the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the Honorable Member, Mr. Ronald Buchan. I felt that he was referring to the conditions of the residents of my home, Region 1. It is now clear to me then that all the hinterland regions are being neglected. All are suffering at the hands of an uncaring government. How can the government face the residents of the hinterland communities where year after year living conditions deteriorate? While they read and hear about the lavish lifestyle on the coastal for a few, Mr. Speaker, My presentation will focus on the following areas: infrastructure, economical development, public security, education, and health services. Mr. Speaker, my presentation will focus on the following areas: infrastructure, economical development, public security, education, health services. Since I'm a proud representative of the voice of Region 1, Burima Wine, on the infrastructure, through the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, there are major defects in the quality of works delivered in the region. Hence, the people in the region continue to suffer. Let me draw this House's attention to an issue that continues to affect the region in Region 1, the residents in Region 1, as it relates to uses of bridges in Santa Rosa Village. Maruf and San Jose revetment, the residents find difficulties carrying in trades or other activities when they have to use these bridges. Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to refer especially to the bridge, which continues to be highly continuous based on substandard work carried out by contractors. Recently, we read and heard the voices of concern residents in Morocco. In the month of January 2014, several millions were spent on the revetment in Kamaku, Morocco. Numerous complaints have been made to correct the substandard work on Kamaku, Morocco, both at the local and national level. But to date, no action has been taken, so the residents continue to suffer. Mr. Speaker, on the hinterland roads, there is a budgetary allocation of $1 billion towards the rehabilitation of critical arteries. However, there is no mention of work to be done in Region 1. The roads in Region 1 are commonly referred as to dry weather roads. The Cubana Road, whenever it rains, becomes slushy, almost impossible. The Magistrate Road is in a bad state. This is as a result of poor work done by contractor and poor supervision by the regional officials. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention to housing and water. Remains a major problem to the hinterland communities. Allow me to highlight a few communities that are currently accessing water from those systems. Port Taitun, 6 pump station, Barabina 1 pump station and 2 non-functional, Whitewater 1, Warmuri 1, and Kamwalpo 1 pump station. Currently, Mr. Speaker, that pump station at Kamwalpo is in dire need of repairs. I am calling on the Minister of Finance to direct funds to solve these problems. Mr. Speaker, the population in Region 1 exceeds 4,000 heads, the system I referred to earlier, as inadequate for the region, owing the fact that potable water is not accessible through pipelines. Students at Learning Institute are made to pump water from wells into tanks in order to go about their daily chores. Energy and power. On the issue of energy and power, there is no provision in Budget 2014 to improve of such service in Region 1. In 2013, work had commenced on the provision of electricity services at Barbina. However, there has been cessation of this work as a result of the condition of the road and the promised bridge that were to be built. Mr. Speaker, we are discussing the estimate of 2014. I am unaware of any consultation which were done with the people of Region 1, Marima Malinga. As there are huge gaps in education which the budget has failed to address. These are the issues that the people hope would have been addressed. Reconstruction of the Marijuana Teachers Living Quarter. Our nursery children and teachers are struggling with inhumane laboratory conditions. Regarding education delivery, there is no provision towards those I mentioned earlier. The minister has omitted to mention provision of transportation in Region 1. Let me inform this Honorable House that the majority of residents in Region 1 get around using private transportation, which is very costly on the residents. However, mention has been made for a sum of $10,000 for transportation per child. While this sounds noble, that the government should seek to do that transportation is provided for all school-age children to and from school. Since they pay $2,000 return by boat and $3,000 by car per day, this suggests that the $10,000 will be insufficient due to the high rate of transportation costs in the hinterland region. I join with the Honorable Member, Ms. Dawn Hastings, in inviting the Honorable Minister of Education to visit Region 1 and its riverine areas. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention to the provision in this year's budget allocated for the elderly. This I deem as a total insult. The elderly in Region 1 and Guyana at large, as I alluded to earlier, the high transportation costs in the region will ensure that the elderly will continue to remain in the same position they were some 2 years ago. Mr. Speaker, another concern of the residents and the people of Region 1 is the demarcation of land and land titling for Amerindians. To this end, I do not recognize provision in Budget 2014 to have these issues addressed in the hinterland communities. Rather, it is proposed provision to be extended on the construction of 100 hubs in 100 villages to facilitate WellPF initiative. I am sure that the indigenous leaders would have expected that the land issues would have been addressed in 2014. However, indigenous leaders have accused the government of snatching their traditional land to poor demarcation, saying some areas and communities were demarcated without their knowledge. It is only fair that this budget would have made provision to address land extension in indigenous communities. Money was spent to commence the project, but it is not yet complete. And to date, land title or extensions have been given to certain communities. Regarding economical development, no provision has been made for Region 1. It must be noted, however, that Region 1 sustenance is heavily dependent on farming, fishing, mining, and logging. Yet, some 1.5 billion have been provided for other regions to do similar activities. Public security. Life remains unsafe for residents in Region 1. Fort Kaituma is a thriving sub-region in Region 1, but persons are vulnerable yet. Nothing is being done to improve their security in 2014. In 2013, some 17.3 billion was expended, but Region 1 did not benefit significantly from this allocation. This allocation budget for 2014 has increased by $2.2 billion, yet there is no mention for Region 1 benefiting from this allocation. Health delivery. This brings me to my final point on health services delivery in the region. Residents continue to face poor health services. Take, for instance, Comaka District Hospital. That institution is currently providing service for the entire sub-region of Moruca without a functional ambulance. Hence, our residents are left to the mercy
of private transportation to get to medical institutions in most cases. Residents are forced to leave the region to seek further medical attention on charity, since the sub-region does not have specialized equipment readily available. This health center is much rich, is in dire need of repairs, and at the moment there is a need for a mortuary. What we have now in 2014 is just an icebox. Another area of concern that the residents face on a daily basis in the region, the supply of medical supplies, which is being done in an irregular basis. Yet, in perusing the estimate, it seems that the provision for the improvement of health services delivery, residents in Region 1, it seems favor more purchasing of equipment. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I'm calling on the government of this country to have the budgetary allocation for Region 1 reviewed so that relief can come about for the residents of Region 1.
I now invite Mr. Komal Chand to make a presentation.
Mr. Speaker, members of the National Assembly, I take the opportunity to support the 2014 budget presented to this National Assembly by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh. In this budget 2014 presentation, the minister has indeed covered a lot of ground regarding the country's economic state. The statistics provided, though they can be overwhelming, give us a better understanding and a clearer picture of where we are at this time. In several areas, we see real growth, and I join in applauding such achievements. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, given the growth rate of last year, the size of the proposed budget and its projections for the months ahead, the trend seems to be upbeat, and Budget 2014 indicates consistency. Given its trust, its focus, its intention, in my general assessment, the government is staying the course. The innovations it envisages fit into the course charted. With greater certainty, we can today say that we are more and more distancing ourselves from that time when our economic stagnation, hardship condition, and a bleak future were aspects of life's realities. Hopefully, just such experiences will remain in our past. The budget team, a better Guyana for all our Guyanese, grips interest. It implies from me inclusivity, and the words carefully chosen, I believe, should be emphasized, and I urge their guide in our economic and other endeavors. When considered alongside last year's theme, we get a lofty political statement, one which is not only relevant but also which, in light of our current exceptional politics, deserve our adherence. The minister's speech informs us that the economic crisis that hit developed capitalist countries since around 2008 may be receding. They are a sign of an economic recovery in inverted commas. While this should be taken as a positive development, given the global reach of that crisis and its attendant hardships, one cannot ignore the other manifestation of that crisis. We need to inquire for instances whether the expected recovery will restore homes to the millions of the homeless who are forced to live in night shelters, streets, and tents? Or how soon will it provide employment with decent wages and give back dignity to the millions of jobless, the ranks of whom will increase this year, according to the International Labour Organization Global Trend 2014 report? We should also be aware that the streets of many countries are still alive with mass demonstration of working people and students who are struggling to shake off the austerity burdens placed on their backs by the ruling elites. A recovery should no doubt impact such realities, but it seems, Common Speaker, that they will not soon or easily go away. And importantly, let us not fail to see the dangers and traps that countries that chose the path of neoliberalism. As we follow economic questions and how they are playing out on the international stage, we should be mindful that other issues that warrant our attention. Allow me, Common Speaker, to refer to one. This year marks 100 years since the First World War started. It was an imperialist war that brought in its wake the slaughter of millions and untold destruction. After this, there was a Second World War, and nowadays we see an aggravated world situation where a prolonged economic financial crisis provides fodder for a pervasive war machine that is roaming and spreading conflicts in several regions of our planet. Will these military activities trigger off another world conflagration? The threat is there. We must work to avoid it. Otherwise, Common Speaker, our dreams for a better Guyana for all Guyanese and a prosperous and productive future can go up in flames. Common Speaker, the budget once again puts much emphasis on social sectors. We know that these sectors are linked to the quality of life we enjoy. Expenditure in these sectors is probably the clearest expression of our best indicator that the working people and the poor have not been forgotten. The sum of 85.7 billion is allocated to these sectors. Given our development status, this is not a small amount. It demonstrates the government commitment to ease the hardship of our hard-pressed people. The housing sector continues to show progress. Thousands of Guyanese today have become homeowners. It is an indicator of a rise in living standard, and here the Guyana Poverty Reduction Strategy Paper 2008-2012 states, when it is interestingly observed that, I quote, more than 3/4 of the poor had their own dwellings in 2006 with adequate rooms for occupants and bathrooms. The introduction, end of quote, the introduction of the mortgage interest relief initiative last year, which support the commercial banks and the building society loan policies, make homeownership no longer a luxury, but has been brought within the reach of the working man and woman. The worthy goal of the past, to house a nation, is today increasingly being realized. As with housing, similar strides have been made in the water sector. Over the year, much was accomplished in the installation, modernization, and rehabilitation of this sector. In this respect, the Guyana Poverty Reduction Strategy Paper 2008-2012 states, and I quote, the significant progress made especially in the hinterland and rural coastal communities has resulted in about 63% of the poor having access to potable water, end of quote. By 2006, Common Speaker, some 91% of households in Guyana have access to safe drinking water.